Eifion was never considered a beautiful girl while growing up. She was often mocked and laughed at wherever she went, whether with her mother or father. People would always point at her in mockery. I wonder if it was truly Mazen Nana who impregnated his wife to give birth to such ugly child, one woman said. Her friend responded, how are we even sure it was Zumuzo who gave birth to this child? Both parents are good looking, but look at this child. She's as ugly as a monkey in the forest, they said, laughing loudly. Mazen Nana was well aware that they were talking about his child. This was a frequent occurrence, and even his wife had complained about it. He wondered what their problem was. Eifion was his child, yet they talked as if she was theirs. This pained him deeply because she was growing older and beginning to understand the hurtful words from the villagers. As Eifion grew, the gossip became more rampant. Even her peers would outright call her ugly. She would run home in tears and find solace in her mother's arms, who would sing her a song to lift her spirit. When the world can't see your light, know you're shining day and night. In the shadows you still glow, more than you could ever know. You are beautiful, don't you see, even when it's just you and me. You are beautiful, yes it's true, and you should know that too. At almost 10 years old, Eifion had no friends. All the village girls considered themselves too beautiful to befriend her. According to them, they didn't want Eifion's ugly genes to rub off on them. One evening, Eifion was returning from the stream with her clay pot on her head. She saw some boys talking and laughing as they walked along the same path. Her heart skipped a beat. She knew what was coming. They would insult her again. She contemplated turning back towards the stream, but decided against it. Her mother needed the water to prepare their meal and bathe her little brother. As she drew closer to them, a particular handsome boy caught her eyes. He was more handsome than any boy she had ever seen. Isn't this Eifion the ugly monkey? One boy asked, laughing. That's her. Move fast or she will spoil our day with her ugly face, another said. Tears welled in her eyes, and despite her effort to hold them back, they fell. Look, she's crying. Cry, cry, baby. Cry to your mommy, the handsome boy taunted. Eifion had hoped he would defend her, but instead he joined the others in mocking her. Heartbroken, she ran home again, crying. She didn't know when the torment would stop. She tried to develop a thick skin, but she failed. The constant bullying affected her physical and mental health. She no longer wanted to eat because the villagers called her fat, and this worsened her acne. The torment continued. She tried her best to avoid them at all costs, but it seemed as if she had an imaginary bell around her waist, constantly drawing them to her. By the time Eifion turned 13, her mother could no longer bear to see her first child wither under the constant insult from the villagers. She and her husband had warned them, but no one paid heed. Eifion, my child, I see what you go through at the hands of the villagers every day. I would like you to go and stay with my mother in the neighboring kingdom. Her hut is in a secluded place, and you won't have to interact with people like we do here. What do you think? Her mother asked. Really, Mama? I would like to go there, she replied happily. Zimuzo and her husband had discussed it a week earlier. They wanted Eifion to decide if she was willing to go, and now that she had, the matter was settled. Eifion packed her belongings and traveled with her mother to her grandmother's kingdom. Her mother promised to visit at least twice a month. The villagers noticed that Eifion was no longer around, but no one asked her parents about it. Within a few weeks, everyone forgot about her and moved on to the next person to mock. Eifion found peace in her grandmother's hut. She barely interacted with anyone. As the years passed, her feminine features began to bloom beautifully. Eifion was a late bloomer. At around 19 years, her breasts were full like ripe oranges, and her hips curved like two calabashes placed side by side. Her hair was thick and dark. By this time, Eifion was encouraged to go out more. People stared at her as if she were an ethereal being, a goddess crafted by the hands of Chukwu Okike. She would walk, swaying her hips from side to side, unintentionally captivating the attention of all men who saw her. Though she wasn't trying to be seductive, the men believed she was enticing them with her wide hips and full chest. They all desired the beautiful maiden made by the hands of the gods. They wanted her to carry their children and nourish them with the milk from her breast. They had no doubt it would be rich and full of nutrients. Eifion left a lasting impression on anyone she met. Her mother, astonished by her transformation, was not expecting such a change. She urged Eifion to return to their kingdom, but Eifion refused. She didn't want to go back. When she turned 23, her mother approached her again. You must attend the kingdom's bride choosing ceremony, she said. Eifion, my dear, this is not a decision for you to make. All single maidens from our kingdom must attend the ceremony. It's a tradition ordained by the gods, so the future king can choose his rightful bride, her mother explained calmly. Okay, Mama, I will come, Eifion agreed reluctantly. In the days leading up to the ceremony, Eifion's mother hadn't seen her, but she hoped her daughter would arrive before the ceremony began. The day of the ceremony arrived, and joy filled the air as every maiden prepared. Their skin glowed under the morning sun, thanks to various skin treatment. Zimuzo, however, was disappointed in her daughter. She regretted not bringing her back to the village sooner. Soon, all the maidens made their way to the palace, where the ceremony was set to commence. Food was prepared in large quantities, and drinks were plentiful for everyone to enjoy. As the people gathered, the sun set beautifully, glowing in the sky. The king made his entrance. I thank you all for coming today. It is an honor to welcome you all to the palace and the royal household. May our Chi bless you. I declare this ceremony opened, he proclaimed, and the crowd erupted in cheers. The chief priest stepped forward and called the prince's name 3 times, as tradition required. Prince Eifion walked into the open space, and the maidens blushed and swayed as he appeared. His charm was unparalleled. Each maiden prayed to be chosen, hoping the gods would select them as the perfect match. The chief priest handed Prince Eifion the sacred feather, which had been passed down from generations to generations. The eligible maidens gathered in a circle as tradition demanded, while the prince stood in their center. He had waited his whole life for this moment, where the gods would guide him to his missing rib. He raised his hand and released the feather into the wind, trusting the gods to lead it to his perfect match. To everyone's shock, the feather flew outside the circle and landed a few meters away from the maidens. "Hey!" the villagers chorused in surprise. The chief priest was stunned. This was a rare occurrence, happening only once since the tradition began. Who has defied the tradition? He wondered aloud. The king and the queen were uneasy. The priest retrieved the feather and handed it to the prince again. But once more it flew out of the circle of maidens. A murmur rippled through the crowd. "Mba, this is wrong. This is an abomination. Who dares to defy the tradition?" the chief priest shouted. The villagers exchanged looks, whispering among themselves. Zimuzo and her husband exchanged knowing glances. "Is it possible that he is talking about our daughter?" they both wondered silently. "The gods have spoken," the priest declared. "I hereby postpone the ceremony until further notice." "Ewo! May the gods forbid," many shouted, making hand gestures of dismay. The crowd dispersed, disappointed. Prince Eifion was numb, drained of all emotion. "Why me?" he whispered to himself. His mother, seeing his distress, embraced him and led him to a chair, asking someone to fetch him some water. Chidinma, a beautiful maiden who had always admired the prince, approached him. Her parents had silently groomed her for him. She sat beside him, placing a comforting hand on his back. He turned towards her, admiring her beauty. "Why didn't the gods choose her for me?" he thought. "It's okay, my prince. Everything will be all right," Chidinma said sweetly, her voice like an angel's. He nodded in agreement, and she soon left with her family, as did everyone else. If anyone knew, her mother would be furious with her for not attending the ceremony, but she had no desire to marry within that kingdom. Everyone went to bed with the day's event fresh in their minds. The next morning, Prince Eifion met his parents. "Am I allowed to choose a bride for myself?" he asked. His father looked at him sternly. "What are you saying? This is not the tradition of our people, especially the royal household." "I will not go against the gods," he said, standing up and walking away. "My son, listen to your father. Yesterday was just a coincidence. The chief priest will give us permission to organize another ceremony. But until then, do not do anything foolish," his mother said before following her husband. Eifion was frustrated. He needed a woman to quench the fire in his loins. His father had forbidden him from touching any woman until after the bride choosing ceremony. Eifion thought about Chidinma from the previous day, and his body trembled with desire. "May the gods help me," he whispered. She was physically appealing to him. He wished she were his wife so he could ravish her body. He knew he was crossing the line by thinking about another woman who wasn't his, but he couldn't help it. He tried to push thoughts of her out of his mind, but it became nearly impossible when she showed up at the palace, asking to see him. When he came out and saw her, his breath caught in his throat. "Hello, I didn't catch your name yesterday," he asked, smiling. "Chidinma," she replied with a smile. "Oh, Chidinma, you look beautiful," he said, watching her blush. "How are you, my prince?" she asked. "Better than yesterday. Thanks for asking." "That's so kind of you." He took her hand and led her to the palace garden. They talked and laughed. She was funny and smart. He realized that if this continued, he wouldn't be able to control himself. So he told her that he had something to do and asked a guard to escort her home. Chidinma enjoyed every moment spent in the palace. She hoped that one day she would become queen and enjoy all the luxuries that came with royalty. When she arrived home, the guard handed her a gift basket from the prince. Her mother rushed out of the hut when she heard the commotion. Seeing her daughter beaming, she hurried to inspect the basket. "Eh? So the prince gave you all this? He must really like you," she exclaimed. "Finally, you can be of use to this family," she added, eyeing her daughter. Chidinma's mother hadn't been thrilled when she gave birth to a girl. She had desperately wanted a boy child. She hoped her next pregnancy would give her a son, but she never conceived again after Chidinma, which made her bitter. She decided that if she couldn't have a son, she would groom her daughter to become queen and reap the benefits of royal in-laws. She took the clothes inside and put them away. Chidinma frequently visited the palace to bond with Eifion, aiming to please her mother. Eifion too began to grow fond of her. She was the first girl he had ever been so close to. A few weeks after the failed bridal ceremony, the chief priest came to the palace and announced that it was time for another ceremony, promising that the gods had said it would go smoothly. Chidinma was nervous. She prayed every day that the gods would choose her. She couldn't afford to disappoint her parents. When the news spread through the village, Zimuzo and her husband sat down for a discussion. "My wife, I cannot explain what happened at the last bridal choosing. But this time, we must ensure that our daughter attends, even if she is not choosing. We must follow tradition," he said. "Yes, my husband, I will make sure of that," she replied. Zimuzo had been angry with Eifion for lying to her and had not visited her since. She hoped her daughter would come to apologize, but Eifion never came. Preparations began again in the palace, and everyone busied themselves with work. 2 days before the ceremony, Zimuzo traveled to her mother's kingdom, determined to bring her daughter back. As soon as she arrived, she spotted Eifion trying to hide. "Come out, you have been caught. I am so disappointed in you. You lied to your mother. Why, my child?" she asked. "I'm sorry, Mama," Eifion said, sitting down. "I didn't mean to lie to you, but you were insisting. I have no intention of returning there, much less marrying someone from there. Your wishes are valid, but tradition demands that you attend. It doesn't mean you will be choosing," her mother said. "What if I am choosing, Mama?" she asked. "Do not worry. Leave everything to the gods, for they will guide you." Her mother reassured her. "Where is Mama?" she asked, and Eifion replied that she had gone to a friend's house. They spent the night together, and the next morning, Eifion and her mother journeyed back to their kingdom, with her grandmother wishing her good luck. As soon as they entered the village, People couldn't help but stare at the strange beauty. They had never seen her before. Men stood eager to confirm whether her beauty was real. They soon reached their hut and rested. Eifion hated being back, but she was willing to endure it for her mother's sake. The next morning was the day of the ceremony, and as usual, the palace was busy with preparations. Eifion reluctantly dressed for the ceremony and left home with her family. As they walked, people murmured, but this time it was due to admiration. When they reached the palace, the king said his opening prayers and the ceremony began. The maidens gathered in a circle, but Eifion did not want to participate. She noticed the angry look from her mother, but she didn't care. She had only promised her mother she would attend, not that she would take part in any activities. She walked and sat under a tree, feeling someone's gaze on her. Eifion had noticed her. Since the moment he laid eyes on her, he felt she was unlike any maiden he had ever seen. He was surprised that she wasn't in the circle with the other maidens, and realized she was the only new face among them. It looked like she didn't want to be here at all. He glanced at Chidinma, who smiled at him beautifully, and he suddenly felt a pang of guilt. Soon the chief priest handed him the sacred feather as he raised his hand. Chidinma's face filled his mind, and then he let go of the feather. It floated through the air as the villagers watched closely, with different families praying for their daughters to be chosen by the gods. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy. Please stay tuned for part 2. See you in our next one. Bye.